King's emotions are like drops of rain, and whether I want to or not, I feel all of them. Katie, The Weight of Rain by Mariah Dietz. Because one night was all they needed. They're doing some construction on the unit above me, so you might hear some banging going on. That's what she said. Overall, I was a little disappointed about the one sex scene that we finally got to experience. That sounds weird. She was doing so great, like all the way through to and then just ended. Okay, so Lauren and Kingston, and of course, everyone has to have a nickname. Lauren is a good enough name. Like, why do you need a shortened version of Lauren? Anyway, she goes by Lo, like L-O. And Kingston, he goes by King, of course, because he's the king. But he's also AKA Bentley, because King and Lo meet at a party. They hit it off really well. They have sex all night long. It's so fabulous, because one night was all it took for them to develop this deep connection, right? King is kind of from a somewhat famous family. His brother is a really famous BMX bike driver. King does that too, but on like a lesser level. So his family is kind of well known, even though Lauren has no idea. When he goes out, he'll use the fake name Bentley. Bentley was the name that he gave to Lauren, but then they connected and they wanted to see each other again. But of course, they couldn't see each other again for a while because the number that he wrote on her hand had smudged, half of it had smudged off, so she couldn't read it the next morning to call him. And the number that she put in his phone, he lost his phone. Lost his phone? Sure. 3 months or something go by until they can meet again. Lauren goes to school for art. She's a real good drawer. She can draw photorealistically. She can draw from her memory, but only when she's seen something first. So it's kind of like she has a photographic memory, which is kind of cool. Her whole sketchbook was like filled with all of these drawings of King and his hands and his sexy hands, his back, and he has like these scars. She's just so obsessed with, that's just all she wants to draw. She's roommates with King's sister, Kenzie, she's actually kind of a bee. She doesn't find this out until like a while later. Kenzie and Lauren shared a studio apartment. Even though Kenzie had plenty of money, I don't even know why they were living together or why she needed a roommate. Her family has money. Kenzie is always having sex with random guys in the same room as Lo as she's trying to sleep. Rude. She'll just have sex right in front of Lauren. She's just so uncomfortable when Kenzie has a gentleman over. So 3 months goes by and Kenzie hooks her up with this nanny position. She's like, I can get you a really good job. It's like $20 an hour. It pays way more than her current serving job. So she takes it. It's being nanny to this 10-year-old girl named Mercedes. Now Mercedes is the daughter of King's brother, Cash. Cash is the big BMX bike guy that's really famous. We don't know how the baby mama dies. I don't even remember if they were married. Lauren and Mercedes don't really hit it off for a while. Like, it takes a while for them to warm up to each other. So 3 months goes by and they're like best friends now. And then all of a sudden one day, King comes into the house and they like stare at each other. And he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, what are you doing here? I'm Mercedes' nanny. And he's like, well, I live here and Cash is my brother. And they're like, what? And she's like, what? And he's like, what? They're kind of mean to each other because they think that each other had like stood the other one up. Neither of them called each other, but they totally had reasonable explanations for that. In reality, they were also being sabotaged by Kenzie. Kenzie didn't want King to be with Lauren because she wanted King to be with her best friend, Isabel. King and Isabel or just they kind of feel like they're siblings. King doesn't really like her that way. For months, Kenzie was sabotaging them. When Lauren would ask Kenzie, hey, who is this Bentley guy? I really liked him. She's just like pretending that she didn't know what she was talking about. Oh yeah, I don't know who he is. Sorry. Kenzie's kind of a bitch. King and Lauren gets really mad at Kenzie for sabotaging them. First, King and Lo ignore each other, and it takes them a couple of weeks to have this conversation about what happened. Both of them are kind of just stubborn. He kind of breaks Lauren down and and saying like, why can't we just need to be together. I know that you keep thinking about me because you keep drawing me in your sketchbook. And she's like, yeah, I know, but she's like being hard to get. So they officially become an item like 6 months after they met for the first time. He's like, I want to do this right. I want to date you. We both dress up nice. You wear a dress and heels, and I'm going to take you somewhere nice. So on their first date, he's very sweet. He took her to, I think it was the art museum. It was like after hours. It was just them, and then they had like a dinner for two set up in this big room. Lauren loved the idea of having dessert for dinner, or like at least eating dessert first. The only thing that they ate is like a big giant plate of desserts, like cakes and frosting and brownies and tiramisu and cheesecakes. I don't know, all of this. Like it was just a big giant plate of sweet things. Thinking about eating all that sugar for dinner, like that's the only thing that it made my teeth hurt. Ugh. And she thought that was just so sweet. King only had eyes for Lauren. Another little detail that was kind of keeping King and Lauren apart, Lo had a best friend who was a girl named Charlie, spelled Charleigh. She never mentioned that it was a girl. King thought, oh, Charlie must be a boy, that's her boyfriend. Lo never said, no, that's not my boyfriend. She just let him think that. So that's kind of like, she shouldn't have done that. Okay, and now we come to the one sex scene, or really it's kind of like a half sex scene. My girl Mariah did a good job, like everything like leading up to the sexy moments, right? They take their clothes off, they're like touching each other all sensuously, and grabs her, takes her to the bed, and then blah blah blah, enters her. They even had the conversation. Oh, you don't have to use a condom if you don't want, because I'm still on the pill and I haven't been with anyone since we were last together. And he's like, oh yeah, me neither. And then in one sentence, it's done. He repeats the movement until I make a guttural sound in my throat, and then King takes me to every edge as he burns new memories and fuses previous ones to this night, making every inch of me feel beautiful and sated as only King can. I mean, it's a good sentence, but that almost sounds like poetry night at the coffee house. Snaps, man. It's the one sex scene of the book. Couldn't you just completed it with like, okay, this is what people, like, you're thinking from like Lauren's point of view, these are the actions that, does that make sense? It could have been finished better. This whole time, she was also preparing like a little portfolio to submit to this scholarship opportunity, or some like a summer internship or something in Italy, where she would get to go to places and sketch and draw all summer. And she does end up winning. She was getting really nervous as the time was coming close, because she's like, well, I'm gonna have to leave you for 3 or 4 months. And King's like, that's okay, we can work through it. Long distance is gonna kind of suck, but it's a summer. But she just couldn't wrap her head around, not being near him every single day. Even though she kept pushing him away at times, like she kept ignoring him. Every time they would have an argument, she would just avoid him. I'm like, girl, come on. You don't understand how much you guys are made for each other. So she goes to Italy, and like she's there for 2 weeks. She hears that King had an accident. He started doing bike tricks again and hurts himself really bad. She's like, I can't stay here. I have to go be with him so she flies back home, and he's like, what are you doing? You need to be in Italy. I'm not gonna hold you back from your dreams. She's like, no, I care about you too much. And so he's like, well, I'm gonna be in this cast for a while, so how about I just go to Italy and be with you for the rest of the trip? And they lived happily ever after in Italy, living the most romantic life ever. That's all it took, one night. You're like the musicians that play all the instruments. If King had made it, it would be gone. His cooking is better than sex. You have no idea what good sex is then, if you believe that.